Hello everybody, let's do another example for allocating out joint costs amongst products that are made from one single production process. And here we have Steve & Company. They're going to produce 4 products, originally named Product A, Product B, Product C, and Product D. They are produced using one single raw material in a joint production process. All of these 4 products that they make have a market value at split-off point. So once they get done doing their production process, they've used that one raw material to produce product A, B, C, and D. There is a market for us to sell product A, B, C, and D respectively without having to do anything else to fancy it up or make it special or further enhance the product. The total joint cost incurred, as we have right here, is $486,000. We are going to make from this one process 40,000 units of product A, 30,000 units of product B, 30,000 units of product C, and 40,000 units of product D. Product A, at split off before any separable further costs, just as is, will sell for 50 cents per unit. Product B will sell for $6 per unit. Product C will sell for $7 per unit, and product D will sell for $10 per unit. Well, let's figure out what the gross profit percentage of each of these products is going to be if we use the sales value at split off method. And we'll start by figuring out what our sales value at split off is for each and every product. For product A, this joint production process is going to make 40,000 units. Each one of them is going to sell for 50 cents a piece. That means that if we do sell all 40,000 units of product A, which are manufactured at a price of 50 cents a piece, product A sales will generate $20,000 in sales revenue. For product B, we will sell 30,000 units, each one selling for $6 a piece. That is $180,000 in sales revenue that product B will generate. And using the handy dandy fill handle here, I can fill in the rest of our products. 30,000 units of product C at $7 a piece will generate $210,000 in sales revenue. 40,000 units of product D at $10 a piece will generate $400,000 in sales revenue. And in total, if we don't further process any of these 4 base level products, we're going to generate $810,000 in sales revenue. Well, the sales value at split off method says figure out what proportion of your overall sales would come from each individual product, and then allocate a portion equal to that of the joint costs which were incurred from a single raw material to make these 4 different products. So let's figure out what percent of our total sales of $810,000 would come from each of our 4 different products. Product A would have $20,000 in sales out of $810,000 in total. That is 2.47%, rounded off to the nearest hundredth, of all of our sales during the period. Product B was $180,000 in sales out of the $810,000. I'm always going to want to divide by this $810,000, so what I'm going to do is make this absolute by hitting F4 or holding down the function key and hitting F4, depending on what keyboard you are. So when I use the fill handle and I slide it over, the first input will keep sliding to the right, but this number will always stay the same because we want to always divide by the 810,000. So now that we got that set up all nice in Excel, that is 22.22% of our overall sales, which are going to come from product B. If $210,000 out of the $810,000 of sales is going to come from product C, that is 25.93%. And if $400,000 out of our $810,000 in sales come from product D, that means product D sales are going to be equal to 49.38% of all of our sales. And then I can fill handle here to bring this down, change it to a percentage. I didn't want that to happen. There we go. That's 100% of our sales. So we figured out how that 100% of sales, that 810,000, is going to be spread out to our different products. So let's allocate a proportion of our $486,000 of joint costs proportionate to what each product's percentage of sales value would be at the split off point. I always want this cell to be the same, so I'm going to make this guy absolute 2 for my calculations. And then I'm going to multiply that by the weighting for each individual product. So if 2.47% of our sales come from product A, let's assign 2.47% of that $486,000 of joint cost to that product, and that'll be $12,000. If 22.22% of our sales are going to come from product B, let's assign that 22.22% of the 486,000, and that is going to end up being, I don't know what happened there, 486,000 times 22.22% is 108,000. For product C, that's going to be 25.93% of our $486,000 in sales, $126,000 with the joint costs allocated. And lastly, for product D, if 49.38% of our overall sales is coming from that product, it should be getting 49.38% of our joint costs. And that is $240,000. And when I add all of these up together, this is going to be equal to the sum of all of our joint costs allocated. That is the full $486,000 that we had to spread out. Assuming that we are just going to sell these as they are, where there's no separable costs, there's no further enhancing costs that are unique to product A or B, etc. Just the only cost that goes into production is the joint costs. What is the gross profit percentage going to be for each product? Well, we have our sales revenue from each product. That's equal to our sales value at split off, since we're assuming we're selling at the split off points. And it's $20,000 for product A, $180,000 for product B, $210,000 for product C, and $400,000 for product D. Means that in total we had $810,000 worth of sales. Our joint costs, we just determined that we're going to allocate is $12,000 to product A, $108,000 to product B, $126,000 to product C, $240,000 to product D, for a total of $486,000. Let's go and let's copy those numbers into our table. There we go. So what is gross profit? It is just sales revenue minus, in this case, our only cost, joint costs. If we're going to sell product A for $20,000, and the way that we allocate it out says that it cost us $12,000 to produce, that is going to be $8,000 in gross profit from that product. Product B, selling for $180,000 and costing $108,000 to produce, is $72,000 from that product. Product C, $210,000 for $126,000 to produce, is $84,000 from that product. And product D, $400,000 minus $240,000 is $160,000 of gross profit from that product. So in total, what amount of gross profit are we going to generate? We are going to generate $324,000 of gross profit. Well, what is each product's gross profit percentage? It is gross profit divided by sales revenue for each product. If we're making $8,000 in gross profit off of the sale of $20,000 worth of product A, that's $40,000. If we are making $72,000 in gross profit off of $180,000 of sales for product B, that's also 40%. $84,000 in gross profit off of the sale of $210,000 worth of product C is, if I can click the fill handle, 40%. And guess what? For product D, the $160,000 divided by $400,000 is 40%. If you're using the sales value at split off method, your gross profit percentage should be completely flat across all products. Why is that? It's because you are assigning a amount of cost that is proportionate to the amount of revenue that you're going to generate. Essentially, using this methodology, you assure that each product has the same gross profit percentage. So this is a methodology. If you think, that one of the other ones, like physical measures, isn't better for extra costs that come with having a greater quantity of something, this is the fairest one to all of your products. Like, it spreads out your joint costs proportionately to all of them to help them maintain a similar level of gross profit percentage. And overall, for our company, well, if they're all 40%, I think you know where this is going. Our overall gross profit percentage is 40%. So the only thing that can change your gross profit percentage for each of your individual products isn't the joint costs that go into producing all of them at once. It's the separable costs, the extra costs that you incur to take them from the split off point when you're you produce them as base level products to whatever finished product you're going to sell. So if instead of doing this, we're going to put some further costs in here before we sell them. Let's figure out how that affects our gross profit percentage for each product. Product A, we're still selling as is. We're not putting any extra costs in there to make it nicer, fancier, more marketable, etc. We're going to spend an extra $12,000 further processing product B, $24,000 further processing product C, and $40,000 further processing product D. And again, these are all separable costs, unique to each product, not part of the joint process which yielded all 4 base level products at once. Well, what's going to happen down here? As we said before, sales revenue is unaffected by what methodology you use to spread out costs, because your costs aren't changing your sales price. So in this case, we have the same exact level of sales revenue across all products. For joint costs, that's not going to change. These are all separable costs. They're all unique. The amount of the shared costs, the shared $486,000 that produced all 4 products at once, that's spread to each of the 4 products, is going to remain exactly the same. So we can just copy those numbers down from above. They're exactly the same. The only difference we have now is our separable costs. There are no extra costs for product A. To finish product B, we're going to add another $12,000 in costs. To finish product C, we're going to have $24,000 in costs. And to finish product D, we're going to have $40,000 in separable costs. So in total, that's going to cause Stevens Company to have to pay a grand total of $76,000 to further refine, further produce, and finish these products. So what is the gross profit percentage? Well, it's still the same concept. It is sales revenue minus now your 2 different cost components, your joint costs and your separable costs. Product A's is going to stay the same as $8,000 because it has no separable costs. It's going to be the same as it was in the chart above. However, products B, C, and D are all going to have a decreased gross profit amount because they are incurring extra costs which are unique to that product. And in total, the amount of gross profit that we're generating from sales of these 4 products is $248,000. Well, now, what's our gross profit percentage? It's the same math that we've had before. It is gross profit divided by sales for each individual product. Product A's gross profit percentage is still 40% because there were no separable costs. However, for our other 3 products, it's going to drive down their gross profit percentage because now there's unique costs which are attributable to that product and only that product. And when you have the same amount of revenue but more costs, you have less gross profit, and therefore it's going to drive down your gross profit percentage. Now, product B is only generating $60,000 of gross profit out of $180,000 of sales. Its percentage is down to 33 1/3%. Product C also making $60,000 of gross profit, but that one had $210,000 worth of sales, which means its profitability percentage is only 28.57. And product D has $120,000 of gross profit out of $400,000 worth of sales. That is a 30% margin. What is our company's overall margin? Company's overall margin, if we choose to further enhance these things, to further refine these things, is going to be down to 30.62%. Well, what would they do in this instance? Well, in this instance, what we're saying here is our options are to sell them as is for a sales amount, or to spend more money to make them fancier, but then turn around and sell them for the same exact amount. And that doesn't seem very wise to me. So in this case, if it's not going to increase your sales value, Stevens Company should just sell these things as is at the split off point.